મોડું થઈ ગયું અને આ ગોંડલ અક્ષર દેવીની અંદર યોગી બાપાએ મહાપૂજા શરૂ કરી નથી.
એટલે હરિપ્રકાશ શાસ્ત્રીજી મહારાજે કીધું છે આગે જોગી સ્વામીને કહેજો શાંતિ ભગતને દીક્ષા આપવાની છે એટલા માટે મહાપૂજા મોડી કરે.
એટલે શાંતિ ભગતને અને પછી દીક્ષા આપવાની છે? ના હોય શાંતિ ભગતને તો અંગ્રેજી ભણવું છે.
અંગ્રેજી
ના બરાબર ને અંગ્રેજી ભણવાનું છે એટલે દીક્ષા ના લે તો ના જ પાડવાના. તમે જોજો તો ખરા.
શાંતિ ભગતને તો શાસ્ત્રીજી મહારાજના વચનમાં બધો જ અંગ્રેજીનો અભ્યાસ આવી ગયો. મહારાજ કહે છે કે દીક્ષા લેવાની છે.
તો એવું છે?
હા.
अध्यात्म मासोत्तमे मासे ब्रह्म स्वरूप शास्त्रीजी महाराज सन्निधौ योगीजी महाराज सन्निधौ शांति पार्षद भक्तस्य दीक्षा कार्यक्रम अहं करिष्ये नाम संस्कार विधि.
અરે ભાઈ નામ પાડવાનું છે એમ ને? અરે ના એવું કરો, નારાયણ ચરણ નામ કેવડાવ્યું છે અંદરથી. નારાયણ ચરણ નામ રાખીએ આપણે તો.
ભાઈ તમે બધા ગમે તેટલી વાત કરો પણ શાસ્ત્રી મહારાજ બોલ્યા છે કે આ તો સાક્ષાત નારાયણનું સ્વરૂપ છે. બોલો શાસ્ત્રી નારાયણ સ્વરૂપ.
પ્રમુખ સ્વામી મહારાજ સર્વોપરી ભગવાનના સર્વોપરી સંત હતા.
प्रमुख स्वामी सुखकारी ये संत परम हितकारी. गाथा महापुरुषनी संत परम हितकारी. गाथा महापुरुषनी संत परम हितकारी. महापुरुषनी आछे कथा प्रमुख सुखकारी.
Diwali, one of the major Hindu festivals. Also, commonly referred to as the Festival of Lights, it is celebrated during the Indian autumn and symbolizes the spiritual victory of light over darkness, good over evil, and knowledge over ignorance. It is a time to reflect, to rejoice, and to share time together with loved ones. However, on the 7th of November 1939, just 4 days before Diwali, whilst most families across India were busy preparing for celebrations by decorating their homes and arranging various food delicacies, young Shantilal had a big decision to make. A handwritten letter from Guru Shastriji Maharaj arrived just as he was leaving to purchase various cricketing gear for him and his friends. On receiving this request to become a sadhu, Shantilal acts immediately. And so, in the true spirit of Diwali, Shantilal, motivated by pleasing his guru, would first need to part ways with so many who loved him and cared for him, friends and family alike.
Shantilal and Shankar Bhai, they were about to go to Baroda to purchase some sporting equipment to be able to play cricket. And at that time, a devotee by the name of Rauji Bhai comes to meet Shantilal. And he tells Shantilal that he's gotten a letter from Shastriji Maharaj and he has to go to become a sadhu. Shantilal, he's very excited. But soon as his friends hear this news, they're all shocked, they're stunned.
They didn't care anymore about the cricket equipment. They were distraught by the thought that Shantilal is going to leave and he may never return. They lost whatever enthusiasm they had for cricket and for anything else. For a while, they just sat there, silent and despondent. Once they recovered from the initial shock, they tried to reason with Shantilal.
And his friend said, look, can you just tell Shastri Maharaj ke, once we get the equipment, you can play with us for, a couple days, then you can go afterwards.
But his closest friend, also named Shantilal, was completely overcome with grief. Between snivels, he said, "Forget the equipment. We don't want it. But you have to stay." One friend suggested, "Let's ask your father to write a letter to Shastriji Maharaj saying that you will come a little bit later." And one by one, each of the friends suggested something different while wiping away tears.
But Shantilal Pramukh Swami Maharaj had it fixed in his mind. He got that letter from Shastri Maharaj, and the only thing he had in his mind was to leave at that time.
And so Shantilal turned to his friends. He said that, "Listen, some time ago, Shastriji Maharaj, he asked me to become a sadhu. And at that time, I replied to Shastriji Maharaj by saying yes. And I do want to become a sadhu, and I want to please my Guru, Shastriji Maharaj. And so the time has come that I must go now."
And then he also assured his friends that I've told Shantilal, that he'll go pick up all the equipment for us, but I have to leave at this time.
Considering how emotional things were with his friends, you would expect the mood to be much more intense at home. The people of Charsad were all fond of him, but Shantilal was especially loved amongst his family members. And now he was about to leave them, never to return.
Leaving home is not, an easy task. And so when Rauji Bhai and Shantilal, they go to Shantilal's home, we would expect an environment where, there would be sadness in the air, everyone would be teary-eyed.
But what had happened, it was totally the opposite. When his father and mother had found out Shastri Maharaj's agna for him to become a sadhu, they were, very happy. And they were upset a little bit because to know that their son is leaving them, and Shantilal being the ideal Barak and the ideal youth at that time, they were quite upset in that way.
But somehow, moments away from his departure, everyone's hearts were full of happiness. The mood at home felt auspicious. In fact, there was an eagerness for what was coming. The father was eager to fulfill his Guru's agna. The mother was eager to do her Guru's seva. And the son was eager to earn his Guru's rajipo. And so, the family's deep spiritual connection with their Guru turned what normally would be a very sad occasion into an uplifting one. Shantilal's family gave the world a view of the strength of renunciation, wisdom, and sacrifice that is a hallmark of the Swaminarayan Sampradaya.
And so the day was Ashovat Ekadashi. Shantilal's mother, Diwariba, she had made some warm milk. And as she was serving that warm milk to Shantilal, she told Shantilal that, "Listen, you're going to become a sadhu now. And so make sure that you please Shastriji Maharaj by following every single one of his instructions." At that time, Shantilal's father, he told Shantilal that, "Listen, becoming a sadhu is difficult. You'll face many difficult hardships, but during those hardships, learn to tolerate them and never leave the side of Shastriji Maharaj."
With these words of encouraging wisdom, Shantilal departed his home on the path to renunciation as relaxed and carefree as though he were off to school, to walk over to the farm, or as though he were off to go play with his friends. He casually climbed onto the back of Rauji Bhai's bicycle and left behind Charsad. When great souls make a departure from worldly life, especially for the benefit of others, we refer to it in Gujarati as Mahaprasthan or Mahabhinishkraman. Shantilal's Mahabhinishkraman occurred just 4 days prior to the time when families would be gathering in homes to celebrate the Diwali season. At a time when students or businessmen were making their way back home and looking forward to being close to their families, Shantilal was walking away.
Years later, they had asked Swami the prasang to narrate this prasang and asked him, "Okay, why didn't you just leave after Diwali and just make everybody happy?" So Pramukh Swami Maharaj at that time, he said in that interview, he said, "Every day is a festival for us, every day is Diwali for us." After Swami had left, he went on the bike with Rauji Bhai, and Swami had found out that he forgot his puja. So he went back home and he went inside his house into his cupboard, got his puja and left again.
It is interesting to consider, of those people who have had to leave home to do great things, how many would have left home enthusiastically, without having to resolve any inner conflict, without having to go into deeper thoughts of self-realization as the Atma. Shantilal's separation from worldly life was so unforced and so unpretentious. Again, years later, Swami Shri was asked, "Were you emotional when you left home?" And Swami Shri gave an almost flippant response, saying, "No, in that moment, nothing was forced." Now, we have seen Swami Shri express emotion when empathizing with pain experienced by others, or when recalling events like Shastriji Maharaj or Yogiji Maharaj's passing. And knowing what we learned about Swami Shri years later makes Shantilal's casual approach to leaving home even more amazing. And so Shantilal felt no pain of separation from the people he had sincerely loved and cared for. On the authority of a letter from his guru, Shantilal made a monumental transition. And so to that point, he had been a source of joy and upliftment to just a handful of people, but the impact of his association was never meant to be confined to one village or one family. But none of that mattered to Shantilal. As far as he was concerned, then and for the rest of his life, he would simply be doing that which made his Guru Raji.
In this manner, with single focus of being reunited with his Guru, Shantilal at the age of 17 leaves his home forever. Though the journey to reunite with Shastriji Maharaj seemed simple and straightforward, he would encounter many unexpected turns that would test his resolve.
Upon leaving Chansad, he first came to the nearby town of Baili, where Shastriji Maharaj had instructed him to meet a sadhu named Ghanshyam Das Swami, who was traveling there at the time. From Baili, Shantilal was to move towards Bochasarn, because this was where Shastriji Maharaj would be arriving in just a short time. But along the way, Ghanshyam Swami took him to the town of Sakarda, and the devotees there asked that the group stay back for the New Year celebrations that were coming in just a few days. The celebrations that we refer to as Diwali and Ankut. And so Ghanshyam Swami decided that he and all those with him would stay back in Sakarda for a few days.
And Ghanshyam Swami said to Shantilal, we want to distribute Ankut Prasad to all these Hari Bhaktos after Diwali. So go to Bochasarn and get some prasad.
At the time, the mandir in Bochasarn was the area's largest and most significant Akshar Purushottam Swaminarayan Mandir. And so delicacies from there were considered to be particularly sacred and were sought after. Ghanshyam Das Swami thus wished to distribute Bochasarn's prasad in towns and villages surrounding Sakarda. Young Shantilal was surely in a hurry to meet up with Shastriji Maharaj, but he complied to Ghanshyam Das Swami's genuine request. And so he traveled by train from Sakarda to Bochasarn, which was a run of about maybe 40 kilometers or so, 25 miles. Soon after arriving there, though, he met the elderly Nirgun Das Swami.
Nirgun Swami was very happy to see this young Shantilal. So he said, "Why have you come?" So Shantilal said, "I have come to collect prasad, as Ghanshyam Swami wants to distribute the prasad to all the Hari Bhaktas in Sakarda." So Nirgun Swami said, "Okay, you stay here. I will write a letter to Ghanshyam Swami that you are not going to come. You are going to be traveling with me, and I will take you to Shastriji Maharaj. In the meanwhile, this Ishwar Bhagat, he will take the prasad to Ghanshyam Swami in Baili to distribute to all the Hari Bhaktas." So saying this, Shantilal was very happy that he will get to meet Shastriji Maharaj very quickly now. So he said, "Okay." અને ત્યાં આગળ પણ નિર્ગુણ સ્વામી was a very busy person because he was always attending so many meetings related to sanstha and people and mandirs and properties. So he always had to be touring. And he had promised we'll get to Shastriji Maharaj, we'll go to Ahmedabad, where Shastriji Maharaj is going to come to Ahmedabad after Ankot from Saharanpur. So we'll meet up with them in a few days.
But unfortunately, Nirgundas Swami was unable to take Shantilal directly to Ahmedabad as he had hoped. Instead, his path towards Ahmedabad became fraught with unexpected administrative meetings that sprang up in towns and villages along the way. These meetings, too, came with long waits for Shantilal and crisscrossing travels, often arranged and conducted on short notice, and at other times, arranged and cancelled in similar fashion. In fact, the group was only supposed to stop in Narrate and then was to go to Ahmedabad directly from there.
From Bochasan, he went to Borsa, then he went to Bhadran, he went to Narrate, all these touring villages, and that was about another 15 to 20 days. And a young Shantilal, he was young. He was so happy for him, never had done such vision before.
Shantilal not only pined to meet Shastriji Maharaj, but he had also perhaps grown fatigued from the extended travels. And so it was here in Narrate that he grew terribly ill.
મને તાવ ચડ્યો અને તાવ એટલો સખત ચડ્યો તો ત્યાં રામચંદ્રભાઈ આપણા સત્સંગી હતા બહુ નિષ્ઠાવાળા એમને ત્યાં ઉતારો હતો એટલે રામચંદ્રભાઈને ત્યાંથી સાંજે સવારે ઉકાળો બીજું ત્રીજું ગયો પણ આખો દાડો પછી એમાં કોઈ નવરા ના હોય ઘરમાં એટલે કોઈ ભેગું થાય ને નિર્ગુણ સાહેબ બહાર જાય એટલે પેલો મોઢા એટલે પડ્યા રહીએ.
Now certainly, the devotees at whose home the group was accommodated would bring medicines for the young Shantilal and would care for him. His fever, though, was overbearing. After 2 or 3 days in Narrate, and with Shantilal still ailing, the group finally made it to Ahmedabad. Shastriji Maharaj had come earlier and was staying at the home of a Hari Bhakta named Babubhai in the area known as Amrivaripur. Babubhai's home was just to the left as one entered the pool, and it stands there today as well. Shantilal had come with the group, surely, but he was so ill and weary from the traveling that he wasn't able to make it to meet Shastriji Maharaj just then. Instead, he was taken away to rest while Nirgundas Swami went off to meet Shastriji Maharaj. But during their conversation, Nirgundas Swami happened to mention that Shantilal had accompanied him there.
Soon as Shastriji Maharaj heard the name Shantilal is here, straight away, Nirgundas Swami was talking about all the sanstha related matters, everything. Shastriji Maharaj left and went to attend Shantilal, who was resting on the first floor of the house of Babubhai.
એટલે પછી ગોદડું આગું કરીને મેં એમને બેઠા હતા દર્શન કરી એમને પગે લાગ્યો ને માથે હાથ મૂક્યા સ્વામીએ પછી કહે શું છે તાવ બહુ છે ને શક્તિ આવી ગઈ છે તો પાછું સૂઈ ગયો અને સૂઈ ગયા ને પછી સ્વામી કહે છે તો હાથ ફેરવો આમ આખા શરીરે આમ 5 હાથ હાથ વગર સ્વામિનારાયણ 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 એમ 10-15 મિનિટ એમને હાથ ફેરવ્યા કર્યું પછી આ વખતે જ્યાં તાવ ગયો એટલે પછી હું સૂઈ ગયો સ્વામી પછી પોતાને જે ક્રિયા કરવાની હતી નહીં તો પછી રાત્રે સૂઈ ગયા.
Now, Nirgundas Swami's impression of Shastriji Maharaj was that he was extremely reserved, almost regal, if you will. I mean, he'd never be eager or hurried when he was told that someone had come to meet him. Why then was he so enthused by young Shantilal's arrival? Nirgundas Swami was certainly puzzled, but never could he have known that Shastriji Maharaj and Shantilal shared an eternal bond. Shantilal's fever subsided the very next morning, just as Shastriji Maharaj had suggested. He had a bath, finished his puja, and then went for Shastriji Maharaj's darshan. The Guru was pleased to see him well.
On Wednesday, 22nd November, Kartik Sud Ekadashi, Vikram Samvat 1996, 15 days since leaving home, Shantilal takes his first steps to becoming a sadhu. Within the suburbs of Ahmedabad lies the simple street of Amliwadipur. It was here that Shantilal would take on the white robes of a parshad.
We know that Shantilal had come to Shastriji Maharaj to be ordained as a sadhu. The first step in this process, however, would be to receive initiation as a white-robed parshad. In the satsang tradition, the parshad stage is a preliminary period wherein a person accepts the fellowship's ascetic vows, albeit on a probationary basis.
Shastri Maharaj called Shantilal and he said, look, I want to give you Diksha today. His fever had dissipated, everything was gone. And it was the Agna of his Guru. And Shantilal said, when, where? He goes, right now, at this time.
It was such a momentous occasion, but it had been brought about by such a simple dialogue. Perhaps it was because Shastriji Maharaj and Shantilal's hearts were one that so few words sufficed. It was Wednesday, 22nd November, 1939. According to the Indian calendar, it was a very auspicious date, Kartik Sud Ekadashi, which is the first Ekadashi after Diwali and after the onset of the new year. It was mid-morning, perhaps 9 or 10 o'clock. Shastriji Maharaj proudly draped a new white upper garment around Shantilal's shoulders, and he gifted him the name Shanti Bhagat. As a side note, new initiates into the sadhu fold traditionally have their heads shaved to symbolize their rebirth or initiation into their new lives of simplicity and austerity.
Ironically, it was an Ekadashi, and everyone knows that when Santos get Diksha, they have Mundan. But it was an Ekadashi, so you're not allowed to have Mundan done. And you can't even have Mundan on the next day, which is the Baras. So Shastri Maharaj gave him Diksha on an Ekadashi. He couldn't have his Mundan done, but he had done his Mundan then on Sud Teras, which is the day the Santos have their Mundan done.
It's also interesting to note that on this day, on his own initiation day, or the day on which he officially cut ties with his previous self and started this new chapter of his life, there was no sabha to commemorate or celebrate the occasion. There was no large gathering of people or well-wishers cheering him on. No drums resounded. No kirtans were sung. No commencement speeches were given. No photographs were taken. Nothing. Amidst only the quaint settings of Amliwadipur, before Shastriji Maharaj, and perhaps only a few others, ever so silently, Shantilal began his astounding life journey as a sadhu. Shanti Bhagat was eager to engage himself in this new way of life that he had taken up, and he wished to contribute all that he could to Guru Shastriji Maharaj's cause. 3 days after Shanti Bhagat's Diksha, Shastriji Maharaj took him to Bochasan for the Kartak Poonam festival that was going to be held there. This was another sacred day, the first Purnima or full moon after Diwali. There was construction work going on in Bochasan at the time, and as part of the effort, the foundation of a new building was to be poured just around that time.
So Shastri Maharaj had told a lot of Haribhaktas and Santos to get together, and we need to finish this seva. So there's about 50 Haribhaktas and Santos who got together at that time. And slowly, everyone started leaving their post, because Shastri Maharaj was there, but after Shastri Maharaj left, he had some other work to do. So everyone one by one started leaving the seva.
All of this happened before Shanti Bhagat's very eyes. Yet Shanti Bhagat carried on, undeterred. He had a deep sense of responsibility and was eager to serve, even in the face of obstacles. He also understood that seva was a personal endeavor, one in which one employs one's own energies and talents to the best of one's abilities towards supporting mandir activities. And so he continued to enthusiastically mind his own work, while also not thinking ill of those who had departed. Shastriji Maharaj came to know of Shanti Bhagat's sincerity, and he was very pleased. Years later, on 18th July 1982, some yuvaks in Vidyanagar had asked Pramukh Swami Maharaj to relate one instance during which Shastriji Maharaj had been extremely pleased with him. Swami Shri related this very prasang.
અને વિચાર એક જ હતો પહેલેથી કે મોટા પુરુષ રાજી થાય, સ્વામી રાજી થાય. ઘરેથી નીકળ્યો ત્યારે પણ એમને એક જ વાત કરેલી કે શાસ્ત્રી મહારાજ રાજી થાય એવું કરવાનું.
And the only thing that Swami said at that time is, I wanted to make my guru happy and I wanted to finish the seva which he gave us to do.
Soon after his Bhagwati Diksha ceremony, Shastriji Maharaj took Shanti Bhagat along with him on his Vichran. This gave him the opportunity to have the darshan of mandirs in Sarangpur and Gondal. Travelling through villages, Shanti Bhagat arrived at Sarangpur for the first time. The day was Tuesday, 2nd January 1940. Seeing the peaceful environment here and learning of the mandir's history from his Guru Shastriji Maharaj, Shanti Bhagat grew particularly fond of this extraordinary mandir. Following a short stay, Shastriji Maharaj took Shanti Bhagat to have the darshan of the renowned Akshar Mandir in Gondal. It was here that yet another significant event would occur.
Shastriji Maharaj and Shanti Bhagat, they arrive in Gondal.
Gondal, a place where Yogiji Maharaj is there. As a Mahant. Gondal is a place where Harjivan Swami, who Shantilal knows very well, because while he was in Bochasan and when Shantilal used to go from Chansat to Bochasan or Darshan, he used to talk with him, so he had become quite friendly with him.
And so he's very happy to see Harjivan Swami, because Harjivan Swami was a very close friend to Shanti Bhagat. And so that evening, Shastriji Maharaj, he tells Shanti Bhagat that he wants to give him Bhagwati Diksha, give him the orange robes the next day. And so Shastriji Maharaj puts this proposal on the table and then he leaves. And Harjivan Swami, he sits down with Shanti Bhagat.
એટલે પછી અમે રાતના બેઠા સ્વામીની સેવા કરી હોઈએ. પછી અર્જુન ભાઈ બધી વાત કરી કે સ્વામીની ઈચ્છા છે ને સાધુ થઈ જાય, આ છે ને તે છે. એટલે મેં કહ્યું મને ભણવાનું અંગ્રેજી કહ્યું છે, ભણીએ પછી વાત થાય. એટલે પેલું ઠીકડી મનમાં એ હતું એટલે એ વાત પાછી એની જોડે કર્યા કે ભણ્યા અને અર્જુનનો પાછો શોખ કરાયો કે સ્વામી કે એમ ભણ્યા એમ ભણ્યાનું આપણે બીજું શું ભણવાનું છે, એ કે એમ કરવાનું એ છે. એટલે બે ત્રણ કલાક દોઢ કલાક બેઠા પછી મેં કહ્યું ચાલો તારે સ્વામી કહેતા હોય તો થઈએ.
Shanti Bhagat made the decision to take Diksha knowing how much it meant to Shastriji Maharaj. And the moment Shanti Bhagat had agreed, Harijivan Swami wanted to take Shanti Bhagat to meet Shastriji Maharaj to get Ashirvad. Shanti Bhagat said, let's wait. Wait till the morning, Swami is probably asleep right now. And so Harijivan Swami knew what this moment meant, and so he responded, no. We should tell him right now. He'll wake up. And so they made their way to Shastriji Maharaj's room.
એટલે પછી રાત્રે 12:30 એક વાગ્યો છે. 12:30 કેવું હતું. એટલે ત્યાં જઈને સ્વામીને બહાર ઉગાડ્યું એમનો રૂમ ઉતા હતા એમાં. એટલે સ્વામી જાગ્યા જ્યારે કોણ છે ત્યારે કરજનને કહું ને કેમ તો કે શાંતિ આ પાડી છે સાધુ થવાની. એટલે સ્વામી બેઠા થઈ ગયા.
Shastri Maharaj was overjoyed. He got up straight away. He had arthritis. Yet he got up, he embraced, he hugged Shanti Bhagat.
He places his hand on his head and blesses him. And then he turns to Harjivan Swami and says, okay, tomorrow we'll give him Diksha.
he was already thinking about all of the arrangements for the next day. And first he instructed to have a barber called early in the morning to perform Shanti Bhagat's mundan. He knew Yogi Bapa used to do Mahapuja early in the morning, so he told Harijan Swami, tell Yogi Maharaj to wait for me before he begins the Mahapuja.
પછી હરિજનદાન કહે જોગી બાપાને કહે છે ખબર મહાપૂજા છે વહેલી ના કરે હું નહીં ના આવું ત્યારે મહાપૂજા કરે તો સ્વામીને ઉઠવાનું જરા મોડું હતું ને એટલે જોગીમાં તો 4 વાગે ઉઠે એટલે 5-6 વાગે તો એમની મહાપૂજા થઈ જાય એટલે સ્વામી કહ્યું એટલે પછી રાખી દઈ.
Swamiji was born on a Wednesday. His Parshadi Diksha was also on a Wednesday. And so Bhagwati Diksha would be the same. It was Wednesday, January 10th, 1940.
The day was post Shud Padwa, some month 1996. Shanti Bhagat's Bhagwati Diksha thi. When you arrive from the Sabha Mandap into the Akshar Deri, on the right hand side there was 2 pillars, and in between those 2 pillars the Mahapuja path was set up. Yogiji Maharaj sat next to the Mahapuja path. He was facing west, and Shastriji Maharaj, he was facing east, and in between both Shastriji Maharaj and Yogiji Maharaj, Shanti Bhagat sat there and he was facing south.
Freshly shaved, minus the shikha on his head, a perfect tilak chanlo on his forehead, his hands folded. Shanti Bhagat's face was glowing with bliss and enthusiasm. He was fulfilling his Guru's Agna. He was vowing to honor the high ideals of sadhu life. And he was making a commitment to dedicate himself to strengthening the Sampradaya. Shastriji Maharaj had given his life to Sampradaya, Siddhant and Sadhuta. This moment filled him with joy because he was about to give Diksha to the person who would establish these on a worldwide platform. What an auspicious time.
And so Shastriji Maharaj turned towards Shanti Bhagat. He did a swasti tilak in his forehead. He did a chandana chanlo on both of his arms and on his chest. Then he placed the janoi around Shanti Bhagat. And then he placed a kanthi around Shanti Bhagat. And then he took the orange gatari and he wrapped it around his shoulders.
It was as if Shastri Maharaj had just blessed the collective sadhuta of the international community of sadhus. When Shanti Bhagat wore these traditional Bhagwa robes, it was as if he had immediately added to their luster and glory. And the people present, they all said the Jainad.
And then Shastriji Maharaj, he looked towards Yogiji Maharaj and says, Ke Yogiji Maharaj, apne sankalp kariye, do sankalp dhun, that this Shanti Bhagat, he acquires all the qualities of a great sadhu, just like you. He studies well, he becomes a Shastri, he's able to serve satsang and able to please everyone. And so with these various sankalps, Yogiji Maharaj starts the dhun. Everyone joins the sankalp dhun, chanting Swaminarayan, Swaminarayan, Swaminarayan.
દીક્ષા આપ્યા પછી નામમાં એવું થયું કે સ્વામીને વિચાર થયો કે આપણે નામ નારાયણ સ્વરૂપદાસ પાડવું. શાસ્ત્રી હતા વડતાલમાં હોય કે ગમે તે હોય કે શાસ્ત્રી નારાયણ સ્વરૂપદાસ એવું નામ રાખ્યું. અર્જુનદા કે છે ગોંડલના અરે જુનાગઢના સ્વામી નાનદાસ સ્વામી બહુ મોટા સદગુરુ થયા એટલે નાનદાસ નામ પાડવું આપણે. પછી જોગી મને પૂછ્યું જોગી મને કે તમારે શું કે સ્વામી કે બરોબર છે.
And Shanti Bhagat was renamed Narayan Swarup Das. And so that day, Shanti Bhagat became Narayan Swarup Das.
Pujanasmaraburvakam adya Narayan Swarup Dasasya Shanti Bhaktasya Parshadasya adya Shashtidama Dikshadina Mahotsava Nimitte Shri Hari Pujanakhyam Karma Aham
શાસ્ત્રીજી મહારાજ શાંતિ ભગતનું નામ નારાયણ સ્વરૂપ સ્વામી રાખ્યું.
A sadhu named Balkrishna Swami would often recall, years later, this initiation ceremony and how Shastriji Maharaj had foretold a great future for Narayan Swarup Das Swami. He spoke about how some people residing in Bochasan Mandir said, Shastriji Maharaj should not have given Diksha to someone so young.
Straight away શાસ્ત્રી મહારાજ નાનો છે એ તો મોટો થશે જ. એ મોટો થશે ને મોટા કાર્ય કરશે જ. He will progress. Don't think a person stays small all his life. He will progress in life.
As he ages, he will steadily progress. Give satsang to hundreds of thousands. The apprentice will far surpass the master. Shastriji Maharaj never hesitated to reveal Narayan Swarup Das Ji's latent greatness. On January 2nd, 2008, Swami Shri was in Mumbai getting an angiography. The doctors commented that Swami Shri's pulse was 60 prior to the procedure, but afterwards it had remained exactly the same.
Usually what happens when you have an angiography, people become stressed and their heart rate increases and so forth. But Pramukh Swami Maharaj's heart rate didn't increase. And so the doctors and the santos, they asked Pramukh Swami Maharaj that you didn't feel any stress, you weren't worried.
The Swami responded by saying, why? I had kept Hare Krishna Maharaj in front of me. I was doing his darshan.
I was remembering my Diksha day when Shastri Maharaj initiated me as a sadhu in Gondal.
And I was remembering, the blessings that Shastriji Maharaj gave to me. I was remembering Shastriji Maharaj's smile, the excitement on Shastriji Maharaj's face. And we could see that this prasang, Pramukh Swami Maharaj would remember quite often. That it was a very memorable, very special prasang for him, and it was very close to him.
The initiation of Shanti Bhagat to Narayan Swarup Das was truly a significant moment, an event that will be forever etched into the glorious history of BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha. And Narayan Swarup Das's life would take a whole new turn only hours after. Guru Shastriji Maharaj, who had promised and arranged for him to learn English, was now about to change his mind.
Shastri Maharaj had given Pramukh Swami Maharaj Diksha, Bhagwati Diksha, and named him Narayan Swarup Das. And Harjivan Swami was with Swami at that time, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, and he'd given him a murti of Bhagatji Maharaj. And that murti then Pramukh Swami Maharaj took to Shastri Maharaj. Shastri Maharaj put it on his eyes and his chest, made it prasadi, and gave it back to Narayan Swarup Das. Now what had happened was, we all know that Shastri Maharaj had told Pramukh Swami Maharaj when he went to go become a sadhu, that I want to learn English. And he really wanted to learn English at that time. And Shastri Maharaj did say, okay, look, I will teach you English and we'll take you to an English school so you can learn English.
But after this Diksha, Shastriji Maharaj told him, now you're going to be studying Sanskrit. You're going to be studying Sanskrit. For an ordinary person, it will be a surprise or a shock. Okay, I thought you promised me to make me study English, and now you're telling me Sanskrit, but not to Shanti Bhagat, Narayan Swarup Das.
He said his guru has told him to do this, and the agna of his guru, he obeyed that agna, that command, and he never looked back. Even though he did want to learn English, his guru told him to do Sanskrit, so he never looked back at the fact. And many years afterwards, people have asked Pramukh Swami Maharaj, didn't you feel any grief when Shastri Maharaj told you to study Sanskrit?
Pramukh Swami Maharaj at that time said, આપણે ક્યાં ભાષાને લગ્ન કર્યા છે? I'm not married to no language. I'm married to Shastri Maharaj. I've come to please Shastriji Maharaj. We should be obeying his agna. That's why we come, to please him, not to do anything else what our mind tells us. So it didn't affect me as long as Shastri Maharaj was happy. So you can see, even that did not hinder his progress on the spiritual path.
64 days. This was the time it took young Shantilal to be given Diksha. From leaving home on Tuesday, 7th of November 1939, to adorning the orange robes of a sadhu on Wednesday, 10th of January 1940. The single aim he had throughout this process was to please his Guru Shastriji Maharaj. In the next episode, we see this aim put to the test as Narayan Swarup Das's life takes another turn. Being a newly initiated sadhu, he finds himself putting aside his own aspirations of learning English to now take on Shastriji Maharaj's new instruction of studying Sanskrit instead. What were Shastriji Maharaj's plans for him? And how does young Narayan Swarup Das cope with this change? Join us next time for episode 3, Shastri.
મને તો એમ જ થયા કરે છે કે આપણા કેવા ભાગ્યનો પાર આવે એમ નથી કે પ્રમુખ સ્વામી જેવા ગુરુનો યોગ થયો. તેઓએ આપણને સૌને નિહાલ કર્યા છે. એ અનુભવ આ જીવન ચરિત્ર વાંચતા વિશેષ દ્રઢ થશે. આ વાંચતા ખૂબ જ આનંદ થશે. સ્વામી બાપા નજર આગળ તરવરવા લાગશે.
कैसा जादू आप मिले ओ स्वामी, कैसा जादू आप मिले स्वामी हम पे किया, हर खुशी से हमारा जीवन भर दिया स्वामी, भर दिया. दिल में तेरे लिए कुर्बानी रहे प्रमुख स्वामी, तुम्हारी कहानी रहे. जब तक धरती पे सूरज की रोशनी रहे, ये सितारे और चांद की वो चांदनी रहे. प्रमुख स्वामी तुम्हारी कहानी रहे. प्रमुख स्वामी तुम्हारी